The idea behind today is very much about finding new approaches for working with community groups, as well as looking at the benefits to researchers and practitioners, to community groups and to wider society for having this kind of two-way engagement.
I'm Sarah, I'm Director of the UCL Engineering Exchange, and the Engineering Exchange was established here at UCL about coming up for 3 years ago, really to try and help to improve community engagement with our engineering research here. So what do we mean by green infrastructure?
A network of sort of green or blue spaces that are connected and provide a range of environmental benefits.
Who benefits from green infrastructure? So we've done that. We've done, here are some of these benefits. So local communities, we mentioned the government.
Nature and wildlife and biodiversity.
Yep. Partly because everybody benefits and everybody pays in some ways, therefore we should engage everybody in the process. But also if we're looking at it as being a network and being about connections, we want our green infrastructure connected, then we also want our kind of social networks that fund and support and develop that to also be connected. And so that might be why we want to actually engage communities in this process. We actually do live in this really complex technological society where science is important in understanding really complex phenomena that are going on. It's difficult for complex science and technology issues to really be engaged in the kind of democratic process or to be incorporated in the democratic process. So often what happens is that these complex decisions about climate change or whatever are made by the experts, and that can lead to a kind of general disengagement. Now we've seen that around the world. This is the very famous ladder of participation, which is very familiar to urban and regional planners. And it starts from saying, if there are these big elite decision makers somewhere, it starts at the bottom with, well, at least the public have the right to know decisions that are being made about them. Stepping up to the public actually participating in assessing those risks and recommending some of the solutions, right up to some of the public participation in the final decision. And there might be various different ways for that to happen. We've seen this agenda on sustainable development growing, and this is really a movement from focusing on the environment towards more engaging with economic concerns and development concerns, and then engaging in the social factors. And often the thing that certainly we struggle with as engineers, and I think also as scientists, is this social bit here. We're pretty good at the environmental stuff, because we have our environmental kind of monitoring and methods and science. We're reasonable at the economic stuff, because that seems to be what drives most decisions. But then integrating the social into a lot of sustainable development has been, people, particularly scientists and engineers, kind of can sometimes struggle to even think, what does that even mean?
I'm going to be talking to you about communicating with communities and some sort of practical skills around that. The sort of idea behind this is that as practitioners or researchers, as the majority of you are, you might have particular skills and knowledge that you can use to help communities address concerns, problems that they might have. But unless you take the time to really sort of understand what their particular perspectives, what their particular concerns are and interests, then you won't get the chance to effectively deliver those benefits. So the first activity that I want to start off with is this one with these big spreadsheets that are on all the tables, or sorry, on flip chart sheets. So the idea here, each of them has a different sort of heading. We've got locations, experiences, and goals. Just go and take the pens and write things that are relevant for you. If you see one that is the same, just put a sticker next to it. That hopefully kind of demonstrates, first of all, that we do have some things in common, but also using an icebreaker like this as a way to sort of build up rapport in a room when you're getting a group of people together. And I think it's particularly important when you have sort of specialists and non-specialists coming together, because often between researchers or academics and community groups there can be a sort of sense of hierarchy that's in place, and this kind of exercise and the whole key to communicating effectively is around disrupting those hierarchies and recognizing that everyone has different skills, knowledge that they can contribute. Even just things like setting up the room so that there are tables and you're getting a mixture of people and getting people to get up and move around and go to different tables. Just now when we were doing that exercise, I'm sure you all noticed there was a lot of conversation in the room. People were just chatting. You weren't sort of just individually putting stickers on the sheets. It's a nice way to sort of generate conversation. We're going to move now into our next activity, unless anyone has any questions, which is around looking at your potential concerns that you might have as a practitioner or a researcher about working with community groups. And just take maybe 2 minutes to kind of write down some ideas, things that you in the past or when you think forward to working with community groups, what might be some of the challenges you foresee or things that make you a little bit nervous. Great, it's already happening, I see. So we're just going to now kind of have a small group discussion, just kind of go through and see if there's any kind of overlap between any of them. So does anyone want to kind of share what they kind of thought about or talked about?
Respect and trust. I mean, these are usually the things that I think are the most critical ones from my side.
For me, I thought one of the problems which I face in most of my small and the big research projects are to identify the right group of participants who can give us the right information. You might end up with people who are dominating quite a lot, as raised by you, or people who are not very interested in the outcome.
My concern is how to engage people and then how to know their interest.
Yeah, so I'm just going to quickly kind of summarize some of the points that we talked about at our table. So one was around the sort of practicalities of a project. So how much time do you actually have for the engagement session? How do you sort of get to the core of the project's objectives and communicate that in a way that's effective? We also talked about what might be some of the barriers to that actual genuine engagement. And then we talked about some kind of things around shared values and respect, developing trust. So this is kind of a very key skill, I think, active listening. It takes a lot of practice and kind of using those skills. They're a little bit different from how you just have a conversation probably with a colleague or with a friend, certainly. So just kind of reviewing those and using them whenever you can in a professional setting. If everyone can just split into pairs, decide who's going to be person A and who's going to be person B to begin with, and then we'll swap. We'll do the same exercise the other way around. And the idea is for person A to kind of describe what they'd like to see in a green space, and then person B is going to try to demonstrate some of those active listening skills that we talked about, and then at the end use that to provide a recommendation for somewhere that they think the person should visit.
With us, it was sort of, getting through the awkwardness of the setup. I think sort of changed the conversation quite a lot, because at the beginning, sort of, I was talking a lot and you were listening a lot, and then as soon as we find some sort of a common ground, suddenly it became much more of a conversation.
The purpose of Mapping for Change is to support community-based initiatives. So you have a lot of kind of technology companies that specialize in providing you computerized mapping. Google, Apple, now Uber, big time, came into this area, other things like that. They just